Hello, in this lesson I'm going to show you how to create a styled transparent document, one that's going to have a ribbon in the top left corner and it's going to have a drop shadow, but will show other things behind it. So what we're going to do first is that we're going to create a new document. I'm going to go in and I'm going to give the document a width and a height of 600 pixels. Make sure that this is set to pixels, and there we go, 600 by 600. I'm going to say OK, and there's my document. Now, you cannot style the background by itself very easily. So what we're going to do is that we're going to create a new layer. In the Layers palette, you can do that by clicking on this button at the top right, and you can say New Layer, or you can also see that there is a keyboard shortcut, Shift-Control-N. I'm going to do that right now. It'll ask you to name your layer. If you want to, you can do so. I'm going to call mine the ribbon. Other than that, you can just leave it and click OK. Now, if you take a look in the Layers palette, you'll see that in addition to the background, we have got a ribbon layer, but that ribbon layer is now clear. As a matter of fact, right now, let's get rid of the background because we actually don't want that. So at the bottom of the layer palette, you'll see that there's a little icon for a trash can. Make sure that you have selected the background and then click on the trash can icon. You may be prompted to confirm that you want to erase it. Now we're going to choose the colors that we want to create a ribbon. I'm going to set these two color palettes right here. The one on the top left is the foreground. The one on the bottom, the red one, is the background. So I'm going to click on the Set Foreground Color, and that's going to give me a color picker. So in my color picker, I'm going to set the foreground color to be a dark red. You can do it by setting the RGB right here. So I'm going to set this to be 180, 0, and 0. And there's my new color. So I'm going to say OK. And now you'll see that I have that new color right there. I'm going to set the background color as well. This is going to be a lighter red. And I think that I'm very close to it now, but I have to make a change. This is 240 and 0 and 0. It's going to be kind of a light red, and there we go. So now I've got a foreground and a background color. So now I can make a gradient, but first we have to select a shape. So I'm going to go up and choose my rectangular marquee. It's right here, the rectangular marquee tool. You'll see that there is an area for feather in the toolbar. You want to make sure that this is 0. You can set it to 0 and then hit enter, and that should set it. Now I'm going to select an area on my canvas here, and I'm going to make this as wide as the canvas is, but I'm going to make the height about 80 pixels. So you can see that I'm getting a measurement as I do this. So width 600 and height is 80. So now this can be anywhere. Usually it's in the middle is good, but it can be anywhere that you want. And now I'm going to go over to the left and choose the gradient tool. You might see a paint bucket instead of it. If so, you want to click and hold down on the paint bucket and select the gradient tool. The gradient will automatically take the two colors in the foreground and the background. You can see up here in the toolbar, that's the gradient you're going to get. So that's the color of the ribbon that we want to make. So I'm going to click somewhere on the left. I'm going to go straight across to the right and not all the way to the other side, but in the middle, and then I'm going to let go. And that creates a nice gradient for me. So there we go. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to set the style for this. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to give it an overlay, and I'm going to give it an outline or a stroke. Now, in order to create a style, we want to go over here to where we can see the layer, and all we have to do is double-click on the right-hand side of this. If I click, then you'll see that I get the Layer Style dialog up here, and now we can give it the effect that we want. The first thing I'm going to do is go to a gradient overlay, because we want to make the ribbon kind of wavy. So I'm going to click on that. You want to make sure that when you click on it, this area becomes blue so that you can access the gradient overlay controls. Otherwise, if you don't do that, it's possible that you might see other controls. For example, you might just click on it and you won't see the controls for the gradient overlay. But if you click on the whole bar, so that it's blue, now we can see the gradient controls. All right, so we want to do some settings here, and you'll notice that we've got a gradient, but it's black and white and it's covering up the red. So here's what we're going to do. First of all, we're going to change the blend mode to something called overlay. There it is right there. And now we can see the red ribbon. But now we can add some nice styles to it. I'm going to make the opacity only 80% because we don't want it to be too strong. Then I'm going to choose a gradient, one with a lot of waves in it. It doesn't have to have the right color, it just has to have a lot of waves. So I'm going to choose this one right here. This just has various colors. It has yellow, violet, orange, and blue. But you'll notice that when I select it, it looks like, because of the blend mode overlay, it looks like we've got a wavy ribbon. Of course, this is not the correct direction. I would like to make the angle 0%. So I'm going to go here and say 0% for the angle. And now you can see that my waviness has extended throughout the length of the ribbon. And now I'm going to make the scale about 50%. You'll notice that you can make those little bumps get bigger or smaller. So I want about 50%. And that's about exactly what I want. But I'm not going to say OK yet because I have one more thing I want to do. I want to include a stroke. So again, make sure that you've got the stroke in blue. And now we can change these settings. You want the size to be 2 pixels. You want the position to be outside. It may already be there. You want the color to be set to 240. Let's see, 240. And 0 and 0. So that gives me what I want. And that's it. So now I'm going to say OK and OK again. And now you can just click to deselect, or you can do a Control D to deselect. And now you see that you've got a nice wavy ribbon shape here. In the places where you've got a darker ribbon, there's a light outside rim to it. So that's a nice ribbon effect right there. Okay, so what we've got so far, the stroke and the gradient overlay, we now want to set permanently. And the way to do this permanently is to right-click on the layer. So you have to go to the Layer palette, you have to find the ribbon layer, and you have to right-click on it. And then you want to say Rasterize Layer Style. This will make it so that you can't change those styles anymore, and they are now permanently set as part of the design. All right, so the next thing we want to do is get some text. So we're going to go over here and we're going to click on the text tool. Again, there are several of them if you hold down that button, but we want the one at the top, the horizontal type tool. Now, don't make a text box yet because we're going to change some default settings. Now, if you go to this area, you should find something that says character. Looks like a letter A with a line next to it, and if you click on that, you can set your font information. If this is not visible, then again, you want to go to the Window menu, and you want to make sure that character is checked. And once you do that, you should see the character palette. If you have not created a text box, and if you have not selected text, then anything you change will be the automatic style. So under font, let's make that Garamond, and we're going to change the size to 50 point, and we're going to set it to an italic, and then we're going to create a color for it, and the color will be a bright yellow gold, and that's going to be 240 by 210 and 0. So that's going to create a nice yellow color for us. Okay, I'm going to click OK, and then inside the ribbon, starting about right here, I'm going to click and drag and create a text box for myself. Then I'm going to type the words web design. That's all I need. So now I'm going to deselect the text tool. I can choose this up here, and that'll set my web design text. If I have this tool, the move tool, by the way, it allows me to reposition that text right there in the middle. But it doesn't look very 3D. So what we're going to do is we're going to add an effect to this too. So now you see over in layers, there's a ribbon layer, and a text layer. So I'm going to double click on the right side of the web design or the text layer. And again, I'm going to get my layer style. I'm going to set a bevel and emboss. What this does is that it creates a 3D kind of style. But I need to have it be a special, have some special settings. So for the style, I'm going to choose an outer bevel. Then I'm going to change that to chisel soft. The technique is now chisel soft. You can see it's way too big here, so I'm going to reset the size to just 1. Now you'll see it's a very, very subdued style, but nevertheless looks more 3D. Then I'm going to set the angle and the altitude so that it looks like that the light is coming from above. We do this by setting the angle to -50 and the altitude, let's see, it looks like 30 or possibly 40. I'll say 40 is a good altitude. All right, so that is the styling we want for the text. I'm going to say OK. And now we have nice text design here. We can move that around to wherever we like. I'm going to finish the decorations by adding a yellow band at the top and bottom. Before I do this, I want to create another new layer. So again, you can do Control, Shift, and N, or you can go over to the top right of the layers and say Create New Layer. And I'm going to call this one Bands, and I'm going to say OK. So now we've got a new layer above the text. I'm going to go over here and select my rectangular marquee tool. Again, make sure that the feather is 0. That's good. And then I'm going to select just about 3 or 4 pixels near the top of that. Not exactly at the top, but kind of nearby. So let's see, this is about 4 pixels. That should do. And remember, I changed the color for the text, so I'm going to use that same color that I had for the text, except this time, instead of using the gradient, I'm going to use the Paint Bucket tool. Again, to get that, you want to click and hold down on the gradient or Paint Bucket tool icon, and then select Paint Bucket tool. So this allows you to go inside, and wherever that little arrow is, if you click, you should get yellow there. So now I'm going to deselect. You can do that with Control D, or you can choose the marquee tool again and just click in another place, but either way, you should now have that yellow band. I'm going to now give that also an effect. It's going to be the same as the text. So actually, if I want to apply the exact same effect that I have with the text, I can just right-click on the text layer. I can say at near the bottom, Copy Layer Style, and then go to the bands, and then right-click here, and near the bottom, I can paste the layer style. And as you can see, that gives us a slight 3D effect with that ribbon. Now I'm going to copy and paste it. I'm going to go over to the to here, to this place, to the marquee. Make sure I've got that selected. I'm going to select more than is necessary. It's okay, you can select a lot. Remember, we're only on the bands layer right now, so we're not going to select the text or the background. I'm going to copy, which is Control C. I'm going to select something else, and then I'm going to paste, which is Control V. And now I've got another copy of this. So I'm going to go up and select the Move tool. I'm going to come down, and I'm going to click and drag the Move tool up so that now it's at the bottom. And you might see that it jumps that way. If you hold down the Control key, you should be able to move it more exactly. You should probably paste the same style again. So for the next bands, I'm going to right-click and paste the layer style again. So now we have that style again. And so now you can see that we've got the ribbon that we want. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm now going to collapse all of this, because this is now in 4 different parts. We've got the bottom band, the top band, the text, and the ribbon below. We want all of these to be in one thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, again, the Layers palette, and I'm going to click in the top right button, and I'm going to just make all of these layers into one. I'm going to merge visible. Don't flatten the image, but instead merge visible. So if I do that, now everything is set in one layer. I can't edit each layer individually anymore, but I'm finished, so that's not a problem. So now it's all one piece of graphic. So I'm going to now take this and I'm going to rotate it and I'm going to put it up in the corner. The way to do that is to go to the Edit menu and you want to go down to where it says Free Transform. Notice it's Control T. I prefer using the Control myself, so I'm going to say Control T. And now you see that I have these little handles around the corners. I'm going to move my cursor until it is a kind of a, it looks like this. It looks like that little curvy arrow, not a straight arrow, but a curvy arrow. And then when I click and drag, I can move it to an angle. So this allows me to take it to 45 degrees. If you hold down the Shift key, it should allow you to snap to that. I'm going to get out of there and redo this. Control T, hold down the Shift key, and then rotate. Now I've got it to exactly at 45 degrees. And I can also, at this point, move it. So if I click in the middle of it and move it up here, you can see I can make a banner out of it. So I'm going to do that and drop it right there. I'm going to hit Enter, and now it's set in the corner. Now there's one more step that we want to do, or I'm sorry, two more steps actually. The first is to apply a shadow style to it. So again, I'm going to double click on the right side of my layer. I'm going to go to the bottom here where it says Drop Shadow. You can see the shadow appears in the top left right there. If I turn it on and off, you can see the shadow appear and disappear. So I want to change that. I want the angle to be the opposite. I'm going to make it 135. You can change the distance so that the shadow is farther away, but I think a distance of 5 should be fine, but we want a bigger size. So this is going to be about 15 pixels in size. That'll give it a nice blur. And that's all. So I'm going to click OK. And now the only thing left to do is crop it. We've got a lot of empty space here that we don't need. So I'm going to go over to the toolbar again. I'm going to click on the crop tool. You'll notice that we now have these crop marks. So I'm going to click on this one in the corner, and I'm going to drag it up so that it just gets in beyond the shadow. I'm not cutting the shadow off right here or right here. And then I'm going to hit Enter, and now it's set. So I'm going to now click on the Move tool, and the crop is gone, and there's my graphic. I can use this in some designs, like for example on a web page. I could also use it in other graphics. Since this part right here is transparent, this checkerboard will not appear if you place it in another graphic. This checkerboard just means that this area has nothing in it. It's a blank area. So this is basically an independent transparent graphic that you can lay on top of other graphics. Now in order to save this, we have to save it as a PNG, because a PNG is the high quality graphic format that allows you to save transparencies. So we're going to go to the File menu, and we're going to go to Save for Web right here. Note the 4 key keyboard shortcut if you want to do that. And when we do that, we'll get this preview. Now you'll see that right now it says a JPEG, that's why we have the white background. But if we change this to a PNG 24, then you'll see that we get the transparent background again. The size of the graphic is only about 40K, so that's reasonable. And that's all we have to set. The compression is lossless, which means that we don't have to set the compression level. It's always going to be the same. And so I'm going to save this. Make sure that you save it in the way that, that the instructions say for your class. That'll be on the web page. I'm going to save this as ribbon.png. And the instructions on the web page will tell you where to put that file and how to give it to me. And that's it for this lesson. Thank you very much.